following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week, a lot of road action, a lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Welcome in, Eagle Nation, to another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, episode number 166 of this year's Inside Eagle Nation. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed. Got a packed episode to get to you of Inside Eagle Nation, but good to see you. I feel like we only see each other on Monday.
Well, usually we're talking about somebody winning a game.
Yeah, that's true.
Last weekend we went 0-3, so hopefully this weekend will be a little bit better for us.
Can't get much worse. There is that. But a little bit different of a note, we're going to start out this week. Got a very special guest joining the podcast as Bucky Wagner, the former director of athletics for Georgia Southern, coming in. And it came out last week that Bruce Yawn had a heart attack, passed away, and it's somebody that had such an impact on this community, on Statesboro, on Georgia Southern specifically. You knew him for years. He was a huge part of what Georgia Southern athletics was, especially in the early years of football with you guys. What's the biggest thing that you're going to remember about Bruce?
Well, Bruce was just a rock. You know, he was a great family man. He was Statesboro all the way through. If you looked at volunteerism, Bruce was probably as great a volunteer as we had to help our program, help basically the football program. We've had some other studs like Morris Lupton but Bruce has always been there to do all the little things, the things that people don't notice. But one of the things that people probably really don't know about Bruce is that in the beginning, when we started the football program, our fundraising for the university really wasn't going quite well. In fact, the foundation was a little bit in debt. And so when we started football, when Dale started football, the foundation said, you know, you can't raise money in Statesboro. Told Dale, said, you can't raise money, that's where we raise our money. And Bruce and Cy Waters were at church one day, and Bruce talked to Cy and said, they didn't tell us we couldn't raise money. And he got Bobby Underwood, who's son of one of the great linebackers we had playing here for us. And they went to the president and went to the foundation and said, you didn't say that we couldn't raise money. And the president said, well, they said I couldn't raise money. Well, Bruce and Bobby put together a group, and they had a meeting at the high school, and they had about 150 so people there. Cause I couldn't raise money. I wasn't allowed to. The president couldn't raise money. So we're going to start a football program. We're not going to raise money in Statesboro. Funny. Well, Bruce and Bobby put together a fundraising campaign and raised about $100,000, which was a lot of money back in that time. And it really kind of gave me a little bit of money to do some things with originally. We didn't, we went through the fall, and in the fall we started Southern Boosters and chartered them, and then I hired a director at Southern Boosters, and then in January and February we put together a campaign to cover about 23 different areas in South Georgia, and we started bringing the money in. But without that startup money, without what Bruce and Bobby Underwood did, man, we might not have started football, because the committee that said we could start football if we raised $250,000. Big amount. And so they raised the first 100,000 of it, and we had some other money that came in, but nothing like that. And that gave me enough money to do some things to get Southern Boosters put together and have a real fundraising campaign. Most of it based outside of Statesboro.
Yeah.
But we still had a campaign inside Statesboro when we did that. But Bruce, and so many things. Now, Bruce was a Snookies for 41 years. And Bruce was a great player at University of Georgia. In fact, Vince Dooley was down to his funeral. And he was a head of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes at the University of Georgia when he played. He was quite active in the church here. Great family man, just a sound person. And we didn't have any money. As I told you earlier, we won the national championship in '85, and my offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator both made $8,000. I doubled their salary the next year. We won it again. But Bruce took care of those guys. All those guys ate at Snookies. All of our graduate assistants, all of our coaches, and anything we needed down there, he took care of. And if there's ever a cookout, we used Snookies. They had a pawn house that if we had a big meeting or we had a big celebration, it was always out of Snookies pawn house. They always provided the meals. But we were just there every day for the whole time. And he was a rock. He just really was.
Do you remember one of your first few times going to Snookies and just what that atmosphere was like? Because at that point it would have been open for about 10 years, but Irk had just come down. It was about to become an iconic portion of Statesboro. But what do you remember about it?
Well, it was an iconic part before we started football. But you go in there in the morning, 7 o'clock, 6:30, and there'd be 2 tables, 8 people out there. And it was, as the athletic director coming in, it was a little intimidating. What the hell am I going to get here? But that's where the Dirty Dozen started.
Yeah.
That was the group off of those tables that got together and helped us raise. Well, that was part of Bruce in what they started. But out of that came the Dirty Dozen, which did a lot of different things for us. I mean, Wiley Brannon, we never paid for a bit of liquor the whole time we entertained. Wiley got all of that free. And just a lot of just good people that came out of Snookies that really helped football. But we've got about 3 or 4 breakfast clubs around town right now. Well, the big breakfast club was you had coffee at Snookies, and that's where you found out everything that was going on. But it was, coming from out of town and then going in there and having to sit and they didn't mince their words around that table. If they thought you weren't doing good, you usually found out about it, and you had to kind of figure out who was on your side and who wasn't. But and then Irk just fit right into that because he just was such a person. He would know your name. He would know your children. He would know when the kids come in. He would know the kids' names, and he was just so good at that and so good in that setting, so good in a lot of settings. But Snookies was just the hub, and everybody would kind of kid about what's going on at Snookies and what's the word at Snookies.
We've talked about the impact that Bruce had on Georgia Southern athletics, especially in the early years, but it goes a lot further than what Georgia Southern was about. He was just a big player in the Statesboro community and really loved that Statesboro community.
Just, so it's hard to really comprehend, what a rock he was within the community. Sound thinking, Christian, great family man, and just all the things that you would think about that are good, he kind of exemplifies. Now, he was, cynical, and they, somebody told the story the other day. He would always kind of throw things out. So a guy walked up to the counter, where he was behind the cash register, and said, "How you feeling, Bruce?" And Bruce said, "What are you, a doctor?" And the guy said, "No." And it says, "And I'm not a veterinarian," says, "but I can identify a horse's ass." And Bruce, Bruce just loved that. He was always into, a little bit of sarcasm and just trying to see how you're going to react to it, So
the biggest thing, and I got the privilege to meet Bruce a couple of times, know his family a little bit with Jeff over across campus, but the biggest thing that I think you take away from Bruce, as much as he did, he wasn't somebody that did it because he wanted his name tied to it. He did it because he loved Statesboro, he loved Georgia Southern, and I think that's the biggest thing that really speaks volumes to what people now know of Bruce.
He was always behind the scenes, and he never asked for any recognition whatsoever. He had something to do, they got it done. And he just, thanked you for helping him, or if he was doing the meal or whatever. But he kind of exemplifies, when we think about the world today, if you are a child and you don't learn right and wrong from your family or your church, where do you learn it? And here, this was that sound base of family and church and community, and it just fits all together in all the things that we think way things ought to be run. And he was the epitome.
Definitely a huge loss for not only Georgia Southern, but the Statesboro community. Really appreciate you taking some time. You were somebody that we knew. We were talking to Terry. We're like, okay, who knows Bruce the best? And your name came to the top of the list, obviously. But appreciate you taking some time to be able to share some stories about Bruce.
Well, I'm glad that I can tell people about Bruce, because he was just, he was a rock.
Appreciate it, Bucky.
Thanks, Bucky.
Once again, that's Bucky Wagner, the former director of athletics for Georgia Southern, and somebody that, like we just said, Terry and I were talking about it earlier on today after you had brought up the idea of getting somebody to talk about Bruce and the impact that he had. And we thought about Terry. He knew Bruce. There were a couple of people that came up that knew Bruce, but somebody that had a direct impact as to what Bruce's impact was. I think Bucky kind of nailed it.
And it wasn't just because of the ability to go to the Breakfast Club at Snooki's at 7 a.m. every day right across from beautiful Eagle Creek, but the fact that he was so indebted and so invested to getting this program off its feet. And for somebody that played for Coach Dooley at Georgia, played for Irk, what gets overlooked sometimes, he's from Statesboro.
Yeah.
Was from Statesboro. So this meant more than not just helping Irk Russell start a football team. This was doing it for home.
Yeah.
This was making home a better place. And who knew at that point, in those early days, going back to really 1980 when Dale Lick and Rick Mandes and so many people, the Dirty Dozen, everybody that is on board with getting this program going, who would have thought that in 5 years a national championship was going to come in? The next year, another one.
With offensive and defensive coordinators making $8,000. It's a little bit more now.
89, 90, 2000, 2001. It didn't take long for everybody to realize this place was not just starting a program, it was starting a culture.
Yeah.
And that's why one of the nicknames for Georgia Southern for a long time has been the culture. We're going to talk with Jay Walker for Louisiana here just a little bit. I know they use that hashtag as well, but there's so much history tied into that word and how guys like Bucky, Irk, and Bruce all fed into it.
And we've talked about it time and time again. That's what makes Georgia Southern special. Like, there is something about Georgia Southern that a lot of people can't wrap their head around. It's people like Bruce that are just so involved in the community, so involved in Georgia Southern. And like we talked about with Bucky, one of the biggest things that really stood out to me about Bruce, and it's carried on to his children, Jeff, a big part of the community now in Statesboro as well, it's not that they're doing things to impact the community to try to have their name on everything. If you look around, there's not buildings all over the place that have Bruce Yawn's name on it, but he is one of the more impactful people in the history of Statesboro.
That's why we've talked before about the BYU weekend, the new signage at Paulson Stadium, and all those names, all those businesses, all those supporters that helped from the beginning to now, and they're going to be part of what is about to take place in this community over the next 3 to 5 years. They didn't do it to get their names on a sign, but you know how much pride they felt to see what they've contributed to, where it has come from, and where it is definitely going very, very soon.
No doubt. Again, really appreciate Bucky being able to take some time to hang out with us a little bit and talk about Bruce Yawn. Again, our thoughts and prayers obviously go out to his family and Jeff and everybody. And we talk about, whenever somebody passes, you talk about their friends and family, but that encompasses so many people around Statesboro that Bruce had an impact on their life. So really, it's the Statesboro community that's been hurt in the last almost week or so now since we learned of the passing of Bruce. But as we dive into everything Georgia Southern athletics this week on Inside Eagle Nation, we're going to catch up with a couple of our good friends later on to talk about the Louisiana trip for Georgia Southern men's basketball. Nick White going to be penciling us into a little part of his schedule because they've got their coaches show coming up at 7 o'clock, so we're going to have to squeeze him in and get him out.
Hawk Talk.
I
might have to tune into some Hawk Talk.
Get them out a little bit early, and then we're going to have Jay Walker, the voice of the Raging Cajuns, down for Louisiana coming up a little bit after Nick White and crew. But we dive into everything Georgia Southern athletics. Men's tennis had their first match of the weekend canceled. It was supposed to be up at number 10 Wake Forest on Thursday. That one canceled because of weather. Did play up on Friday, or up at Furman on Saturday, rather. Fell 5-2 to the Paladins. That's one that had to be moved indoors because of wintry weather up in the Carolinas, but did get that one in and fell 5-2. They will hit the road again this weekend to take on North Florida on Friday, 3 p.m. the first serve. I'm going to guess they don't have to move that one inside because of wintry weather.
I would hope. I think we got lucky with Jasper because there was a chance that it could have been a little bit worse here. We know that parts of Virginia and the Carolinas got a lot of snow and ice, and we hope that everybody is doing well in that respect. But hoping for a better result in the debut of Coach Bayon, but a lot more chances to make the first season a really good season. But thankfully, they were just able to play it all with what was rolling through that part of South Carolina.
Georgia Southern Rifle continues to be number 18th in the country, and they took a pair of matches against the Citadel. They rallied back from 21 down after small board to beat the Citadel by 9 points on the final shot of the day. Aaron Ballard shot a career best 577 in the small bore, also scored a career high 1162 in the aggregate. Georgia Southern taking both against the Citadel and the Citadel women's team on Saturday. They will return to Charleston to face VMI in 2 matches on Saturday, along with taking on number 13 in the country, Jacksonville State. Again, that will be on Saturday, starting at 8 a.m. up in Charleston.
So that's got to be the equivalent of a buzzer beater.
I would think so.
On the final shot, it would have to be.
Works for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
you don't think to associate it that way, but that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anybody rushing the range, but I think that would be awesome, but I don't know that that's exactly the safest thing in the world.
Catch it all on Twitch.
No, that's only home maintenance.
Oh, the Citadel doesn't have the Twitch?
I don't think so.
We didn't have the Twitch when I was there.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're the Citadel expert here.
What's been 8? It's been 8 years now.
Still the Citadel expert.
They've done a lot of construction on campus recently.
How about it?
They're not touching McAllister Fieldhouse, though.
No.
I feel like that and the fact that Convocation Center's coming in across town is amazing to me because I thought forever that and McAllister Fieldhouse were historical landmarks because we know they used to call it the Armory. It's built like the airplane hangar because that's what they used it for during World War II. But I thought that I feel like Hanner is going to be encased in plastic eventually.
I never went to McAllister.
They added a really elaborate center-hanging scoreboard about, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, and it was donated by the class of 62. And you've seen how big the one in Boone is at the Holmes Convocation Center.
Yep.
This one's bigger than that.
Wow. No, thank you. Georgia Southern Swim and Dive had their meet up at East Carolina canceled because of weather on Saturday. So now they will try for the 3rd time this year to open up the spring portion at home this time against North Florida on Saturday at noon. Hopefully they get that one in the pool. It'll be the 3rd time they've tried to open up the spring.
At least it's not all ice.
Yeah. It's inside.
Yeah. It's heated inside.
Women's tennis was supposed to start up at number 10 Georgia Tech, but that match postponed. They will now head to Clemson, who is ranked 73rd in the country. Saturday, 11 a.m., the first serve. That will get their spring portion of the schedule rocking and rolling. Women's track and field in the indoor part of their schedule ran at the Liberty Elite Invitational this past Friday and Saturday. Nicole Harris continued her strong freshman season, finishing third in the 800-meter finals, posting a time of 2 minutes, 18 seconds. Harris also had a 10th place finish in the mile with a sub 5:15. I can't even think about running a mile in under 5:15.
Yeah, even watching some of the
I don't know if
videos.
I'd do it 8:15.
Mile and 8:15. I definitely can't do that. No chance.
I'm slow. They'll have a few weeks to get their legs back underneath them before heading to Birmingham to run in the Sanford Bulldog Invite on February the 12th.
Just get a car or a golf cart or something.
Exactly.
Take care of the mile.
Bingo. See, this is why you and I work. This is why this works.
We'll have a lot of miles to take care of once we get to baseball season here in a few
Oh,
weeks.
don't you worry. Georgia Southern women's basketball in action this past weekend. Saturday up at Georgia State, the lone game of the weekend, and they fell 58-56. It was a crazy game. We're going to get to the end of it. We're not getting off that easy.
Yeah, because I saw the video, and I know where this was
Yep,
going.
don't you worry. We're getting there. Don't you worry. Hey, ULM people might appreciate this synopsis, considering it's Georgia State.
I feel like we need Nick on to talk about this.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Thinking about DeMarcus Simons from a few years ago.
That may or may not have gotten brought up on postgame. Luckily, Chris Bergen was there. They had the doubleheader, and Chris had to slide in.
Oh, nice.
But anyway, Georgia State got off to a really hot start. Georgia Southern could not shoot for anything in the first quarter.
Altitude. It's fine.
I wish I'd have thought of that.
Look, it's the last year of it. We got to get our jokes in now before they open up their jewel. Yeah,
Allegedly.
Well, yeah.
Georgia State got out to a 20-8 lead. The second quarter then was pretty even, 10-all in the second quarter. So Georgia Southern down by 12 at half, and then came out in the third quarter about as hot as could be. 24-14 was the third quarter score, and so Georgia Southern found themselves just down by 2 entering the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter would end up being even after Georgia Southern took the lead on a Deja Holmes 3 from the left wing with about 15 seconds left. Georgia State would come down the floor, would hold for the final shot with it tied at 56. It would go to the corner for Cameron Ziak. We talked about her last week, one of the best three-point shooters in the league the last couple of years. She continued to be that, except for on that last shot. She missed it off the right side. Maya Burns got the rebound. As Maya got the rebound, Coach Howard was starting to call the timeout, and we're bench side at Georgia State. Well, we are this year. We've been everywhere in that gym.
Yeah, no more fourth and fifth. We're back down to...
Thank the Lord.
There, I guess it's sea level, but no, for normal people, it's third floor.
Kind of.
Okay.
Coach Howard's calling a timeout. Maya Burns gets the rebound, puts the ball under her right arm, is calling for a timeout. Janiah Lovehill, the point guard on the floor, is calling a timeout. None of the three officials see a timeout somehow. Deasia Merrill for Georgia State takes the ball from underneath Maya's arm, puts it up, last second shot goes in, and somehow she timed it perfectly to where there is no time left on the clock. And that was that for Georgia Southern. It ended up being a 58-56 victory for Georgia State over Georgia Southern, and you can talk about it. Don't put yourself in that position for the officials to affect the game, but it goes back to, coincidentally, third floor of the Georgia State Sports Arena, the last time a officiating crew was reprimanded by the Sun Belt Conference. The three officiating crew getting suspended for, I think it was a game.
Yeah.
When DeMarcus Simons did DeMarcus Simons things.
Well, here's the ironic thing also about that whole situation. ULM, if they could come back from 21 down in the second half to take the lead.
Yes.
And that last possession where Simons took 7 or 8 steps without dribbling, but somehow he never had control, so the whistle never blew.
It.
Yeah. The women's Saturday came back from 18 down.
Yeah.
And that all gets overshadowed because of the events of the final 10 seconds.
And this isn't something that's, and I'm not going to go fully on my soapbox because we ain't got that kind of time, but Thursday games and Saturday games are extremely differently officiated. And it goes pretty much everywhere in the mid-major. Because Thursdays, you don't compete with the SEC, with all the big-time games. Saturdays, you are. It's crazy to me how differently Thursday and Saturday games go. And again, we're not going to get on that soapbox, but
it does depend on the kind of pool that you're working with. And I know now more so than ever due to COVID, they're trying to keep officials regional to limit the amount of travel. For instance, that's why we got Ted Valentine here on Thursday.
Oh, Teddy.
For the Coastal Carolina game, which fortunately you were here for, and we had a chance to see him. Last time he had done a Georgia Southern game was at Coastal. It was in January of 2018, I think. But he's a Charleston native, so that's 150 miles away. In his case, they'd probably be a little bit more apt to go with more. I think he did Duke and North Carolina State on Saturday. But even so, that's not terribly far away.
No.
But for somebody like that, or a Roger Ayers or a Mike Eads, they would be able to send them to the primary games. But for the most part, guys are going to be kept relatively in region with still trying to deal with the COVID restrictions.
And I realize there's referee shortages and umpire shortages, all kinds of officiating shortages across the country. And trust me, I get it. Been there, done that. But not how you wanted it to end for Georgia Southern. 58-56, Georgia State gets the victory. Georgia Southern will host 2 in the next 5 at home for Georgia Southern women's basketball. How about that? 3 weeks. I don't have to leave Statesboro.
I'm leaving in a day and a half.
Oh, sorry. I'll see you next week.
I'll tell you about the happenings down in the boot.
Yeah. But Georgia Southern will take on the Trojans of Troy on Black History Night on Thursday, 6 p.m. the tip-off, 5:30 the airtime with Chad Jackson and I on hashtag 99.7 and the Georgia Southern Sports Network. And then on Saturday, South Alabama rolls in for National Girls and Women's in Sport Day, 2 p.m. the tip-off with 1:30 the airtime on the Georgia Southern Sports Network.
You're also running a clinic after that contest.
That is correct.
Very nice.
You can sign up on gseagles.com to have a clinic with the Georgia Southern women's basketball team and staff. But this Troy game...
Get ready. Get ready to talk. I'm just telling you.
Oh, no doubt. This will be, according to herhoopstats.com, this is going to be the fastest game in Division I this year.
I totally believe it.
Because Troy is the third fastest team as far as pace goes. Troy's the third fastest team. Georgia Southern the fifth fastest team in the country. None of the other top 5 play each other. So this, on paper, is going to be the fastest game in the country this year.
Well, I know, especially since Coach Howard has gotten here, but even with Coach Drown, how high tempo some of those games were, big swings. It seems like 150 combined points is light. Seems like both could easily get into the 80s or 90s, just depending on who's able to shoot at what time. But I would anticipate this one being a very high-scoring game.
And as far as wins and losses go, this hasn't necessarily been a favorable matchup for Georgia Southern in the sense of the final outcome.
These have been good games, though.
In the Sun Belt, it's 1-14 the record. The only win coming last year where Georgia Southern won 96-91. That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of talking, but that was a lot of fun. But it's been, you've had a game go to overtime in 15, I believe. One of those.
Starts to run together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Trust me. Yes, it does. I got that. But
I saw the hamster wheel go the waves at 15s and 14s.
I'm like, no, yes. But it's been pretty good game. It's been really good games for Georgia Southern against Troy. You've seen a couple of them when it was the doubleheader format. Well, you saw the second half of some of them when it was doubleheader format.
Well, I know usually it's 60-60, but when you're watching Georgia Southern Troy, it's third quarter and you're both in the 70s. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's Troy. But we talked about some of the former performers with Mendoza and Ramirez and how this is a Shanda Rigby program, not a team. And I go back to the idea of that program when you're year in, year out, you're competing for championships. It's them and it's Little Rock on the women's side. But now it's Felmus Karonga who's taken over as one of the top players in this conference.
Yeah, averaging a double-double, almost 14 points, 10 rebounds a game for the Kenyan native. She has been really, really good for this Troy team. You bring up Caitlyn Ramirez, a cool story we found out last year. So Caitlyn Ramirez graduated 2 years ago from Troy, was a 4-year all Sun Belt, one of top 25 in program history scoring wise.
Yeah.
She is now a Alabama State Trooper, and there was a game where Troy went to play, I can't remember if it was Auburn or Alabama. I'll have to go back and look. But went to play Auburn or Alabama, and Caitlyn Ramirez was the State Trooper assigned to escort Shanda Rigby that day.
That's cool.
That was really cool.
That's good stuff.
But you dive into Georgia Southern men's basketball. It was a tough week for men's basketball, falling in both of their games, 76-72 against Coastal Carolina, and then fell 70-62 on Saturday against Appalachian State. Chad and I got to tune in for the majority of it on Saturday on our way back from Atlanta, but really in both of them, Georgia Southern down by a considerable margin at one point in the game, erases that margin, and then just couldn't finish the deal.
They're getting off to such poor starts offensively, and two different ways. Against Coastal, we knew that the Chanticleers were going to keep changing their defenses, and the Eagles got sucked into it because they thought they had a lot of open looks from three, but that's exactly what Coastal wanted, and the guys that were shooting were not Georgia Southern's best percentages. They were able to lock in on Getty. They were able to lock in on Kamari Brown. Didn't have Cam Bryant last weekend. The hope is he's going to be back for the Louisiana trip. But even so, there were 8 first-half ties between Georgia Southern and Coastal. In the second half is when they started to open it up because they went 5 of 6 from 3. Georgia Southern had some issues with consistency. But once that 14-point deficit was up on the board, then the light went on. A lot like the South Alabama game from the week before. Georgia Southern got down by 13, but then for about 5 minutes, they were awesome on offense, came back and took the lead. Against Coastal, they were able to force some turnovers. They didn't commit very many turnovers. They were in the middle of a really good stretch of protecting the basketball, but unfortunately, even though they weren't giving it away, they weren't able to account for more offense. Now, they did get it back to 3. They had a couple of steals with their press. Kamari Brown knocked down a 3 from the right corner. It was 73-70. But then that last possession, once they got down by 4, they didn't get a chance at a timely shot, so Coastal ended up hanging on for the victory. And then Saturday with App, started 3 of 14 from the field. App was 9 of 11. They made 7 straight shots at one point. This was a team that had just beaten Georgia State and was cooking. They were 3 in a row, 5 out of 6. They won the tournament championship last year with 4 games in 4 days. And it didn't feel like Georgia Southern was really in it until they were. Later on in that second half, it was a Trey Cobbs 3 that cut the deficit from 12 down to 2, but Adrian Delph was terrific. He's got a chance to be the player of the year. Justin Forrest was usual Justin Forrest, and despite the Eagles being really good at the free throw line and being really good on the glass, App only had 18 rebounds in the entire game. Georgia Southern out-rebounded them 33-18. And the shooting percentage improved a lot during the second half, but they just dug themselves such a hole in the first half they couldn't get into their rhythm, and that's why they got swept in the weekend.
Eagles will try to snap a 3-game losing streak as they will head to the Boot State. They will take on the ULM Warhawks, and we are
I'm so happy to see you.
Oh, my God. I love it. Happy to be joined now by the voice of the ULM Warhawks, Nick White. Nick, what's going on, man?
Hey, guys. Getting set for a coach's show here and just enjoying some gumbo on this cold Monday, and glad to be with you guys.
God, I'm envious.
Are you about to Hawk Talk?
We are about to Hawk Talk, yes. Coach Richard will be joining me here in about 25 minutes.
So,
Didn't think that would happen.
No, I don't think so. But take us into this ULM team, Nick. 10-10 on the season, 2-6 in conference play. What is it about this team that has gone right and not gone right?
Well, what has not gone right is COVID. We've had major issues with that through the first 3 weekends. Now, we're one of 3 teams that have played all 8 of our conference ball games. And look, one thing you can say about Coach Richard is if they got 7 guys and 1 coach, we're going to play ball. And that happened at UTA where we ended up, playing with 7 guys. And we had 2 guys out, starters, in Andre Jones, Kareem Ozier, due to COVID protocols. And then that morning, literally, I was getting ready to go to the College Park Center, and I found out Langston Powell tested positive for the flu. And so literally had 2 guards for the entire ball game, went to overtime. And really just, I've done a ton of games, over 350 men's basketball games at ULM over my time. I don't know if I've been as proud of a team as I was, a couple Saturdays ago against UTA and winning that ball game and gutting that one out in overtime. But this past weekend we had everybody back healthy, and you're running into two really good teams. Troy shot the lights out, 69% in the first half, and then cooled off down to 60% for the entire ball game. They finally closed out 1 for 7 from the field in the final 5 minutes, but it was still just too much. ULM able to close the gap to 8, but just not enough to win that ball game. And then, South Alabama, they really won it defensively. They switched to a 2-3 zone, and the Warhawks really, really, really struggled against that. They ended up with 18 turnovers in that ball game. Ton of points off turnovers for South Al. I thought ULM's defense was right there on point. But you just can't turn the basketball over that much, and that's what they did. And so you ask, what's going right and what's going wrong. Not a lot is going right for this team. They were playing really good before the Christmas break. And Coach, I remember talking to him, and he talked about how much he did not want to go to break, and kind of had it rolling. And really, since coming back from Christmas break, just because of the COVID situations that we've had and all the different things, it just it hasn't, in the first 4 weeks of conference play, it hasn't clicked. And this is such a pivotal weekend for us, and really for Georgia Southern and Georgia State. Whenever you look at the standings and where we're at, we're looking at seeding. It's a pretty big weekend in Monroe for us to fan here.
I think about the last time we saw you guys on a basketball court. It's only been not even 2 years ago, but I look up and down this roster, I see, I kind of remember Langston Powell. And on your side, you can look at ours and say, there's Elijah McCadden. Outside of this, we haven't seen any of your guys. You haven't seen any of Georgia Southern's guys. And from your standpoint, it seems like the offense has really improved. You're second in the league in scoring, nearly 76 a game.
Yeah, but that's kind of sputtered as of late. And I think, the scout is out on us, and they've kind of figured it out. I mean, only 58 points and 56 points this past week on Saturday against South Alabama. And obviously the UTA game, we had a completely different game plan. Coach scrapped the game plan once Langston went out and really kind of took the air out of the basketball, played a lot of zone defense, and try to really limit the possessions. But yeah, still, I mean, there's some offensive capabilities there. The big story, I think, whenever you look at conference numbers, Nika Metz-Clarishvili, have fun with that, Danny, on Thursday night.
I was going to make him say it first.
Just call him Nika whenever you're in game action. But whenever it's a big three, it's Clarishvili. He's really played so well in conference play. Yes, I'm showing off to you guys as well. He's really played so well inside conference play, and has been the pleasant surprise. He might be the best player on ULM right now. And then Russell Harrison has really stepped up his game, and obviously Andre Jones-Carimo's here. They missed a couple of ball games, but whenever you look at this team, those guys really have to continue to produce at a high level, and I don't think they did this past weekend. I think that both teams did a good job on Nika and really kind of shutting him down, and yet he still found a way to go get his. But you really got to have 4 guys scoring in double figures for this team to be able to have a chance. And right now, at least over the past weekend, we just did not get that opportunity to get those guys going.
You brought up Russell Harrison, somebody who's scoring 13 points, nearly 6 rebounds a game, is most on the team for a guy who seems more like a 3-man at 6'7" slasher. But in reading some things about him from last year to this year, it seems like Coach Richard has really tried to get him to focus on his rebounding, especially on the offensive end. And looking at the numbers from last to this, it seems like some of the message has been received.
Yeah, and he's done a really good job on the defensive boards. He had a career high against UTA, 12 defensive rebounds, 13 overall. Has really improved that area of the game. And if you remember about Russ, he went into last season. I know you guys didn't see him last year, just like we didn't see you guys. And you're right, a completely different roster. But that's pretty much every team inside the league. South Alabama, I mean, they got so many transfers. It's like a deep Power 5 transfer group over there with South Alabama, and that's kind of every team in the league right now. But Russ came in as a first-team junior college All-American last year, and he disappointed. He didn't play good at all. He's finally started to have it click, and whenever we've needed big shots, he's been the guy to step up and really be that guy. And so, over these last 10 ball games that are scheduled, hopefully he can continue to elevate his level of play. Everybody gets another year, and I'm excited to see if he sticks around, how good he could really be, going through these final 10 games, and then obviously next year.
Somebody that we've talked about a lot, not necessarily on air with you, but Keith Richard, his 11th year at ULM, somebody that is widely respected across the league.
Love that guy.
Is somebody that knows the state of Louisiana probably better than anybody, maybe more than Jay Walker. We won't tell him that. But what is it about Keith Richard?
Don't do anything to prop up Jay Walker's ego, okay? So don't do anything. We know he's old, and that's it. That's all that matters about Jay, okay?
But what is it about Coach Richard that makes him such a institution at ULM and really the state of Louisiana?
Well, he spent pretty much his entire career in the state of Louisiana, which is almost unheard of. He had a couple of years early in his career. He was at Marshall, but for the most part, he's been in the entire state. He had all those years at Louisiana Tech, which he'll never get the credit for how good of a job he did at Louisiana Tech. He was at 150 and 117 in his 9 years at Tech, and that was whenever they were in the WAC. Whenever the WAC was a 3-bid league, and he had a guy, still playing in the NBA, and Paul Millsap, had a couple other pros, did a really, really great job, and I don't think ever fully gets the credit he deserves. And then I really throw out the first 3 years at ULM. Georgia Southern was not in the league, so maybe, I know you guys know the history, but maybe Georgia Southern fans don't understand. We were on the brink of the death penalty due to APR issues from the previous coach whenever coach took over, and he sacrificed his record for the betterment of his university. He's an alum. He played point guard at ULM. He loves this place. He is an institution here. He's in his, double-digit seasons, and his record is not indicative of how good of a job he's really done. And you guys came in the league, and I look at some of these epic battles, in y'all's early years, and I mean, we should have been an NCAA tournament team, and Georgia Southern should have been an NCAA tournament team as well. But we're unfortunately going to be a one-bid league. But there were some really good battles, and we've had some dog fights there in Hanner, and I look forward to coming back there, I believe, to close out the season.
Yeah.
But, coaches, I've known Coach. I did his coach's show back whenever he was at Louisiana Tech, and obviously I've called every single game over his time here. He and I started the very first game at Texas Tech back in the 2010 season, and we've been together. So, he's an interesting cat, and I'll talk to him here in a little bit. And he won't be happy about the 2 losses, but he and I have a great respect for each other, and I think the fans around here have that as well.
All right, number one, you've got to tell him that we said hello, because we think he's a dog. We think he's an outstanding guy. I cannot wait to see him once we get down there. But Also, we were talking a little bit early about Hanner Fieldhouse. It's the oldest facility in the league. Fant Ewing Coliseum isn't too far behind that. You guys celebrating your 50th anniversary of its opening in 71. Richard talked about going there as a senior in high school, ended up playing for Coach Vining, first NCAA tournament team in 82. What has it been like from your standpoint celebrating 50 years of Fant Ewing?
Well, it's been awesome, and I'm fortunate to, get really lucky in what I do, and I'm from the area. I did not go to ULM, but I grew up in this area, so I followed, going to games and going in the early years of Fant Ewing. I remember, one time getting to go in there and think it's the coolest thing ever just to go and shoot hoops on the old tartan floor that they had. I mean, and just the battles that they had in there. And it's been awesome this year. And obviously, you guys will get it, to have Coach Vining just sitting at the same table that we are, and he's doing the ESPN Plus games now as far as the color analysis. And you got a legend right there, 402 wins, right there beside you, and just the wealth of knowledge. It's pretty cool. And obviously that building needs some TLC, no doubt, just like Hanner has gotten some TLC and will need it. But you guys know my affinity for that place. I love going to Hanner Fieldhouse, and you guys love coming to Fant Ewing. We may be the only broadcast crews that like going to each other's facilities, but I love going to a game at Hanner. I can't remember Nick Capola. We had an overtime game there, and I remember, he hit a big 3 and we won in overtime. And I remember the fans and everything, they were kicking me in the back, hitting me in the head and all this stuff.
That's because they liked
got really excited. Well, if you say so, yeah. I mean, look at me. I mean, who couldn't like me? But, it's just a really cool place. I love the intimacy of the place. And again, Fant Ewing doesn't have that intimate feel, but it's got that old school Coliseum feel.
Yeah.
And, if we can, and you guys have been in there, where it's gotten loud, that place will get loud just like Hanner will get loud. And so I think you do have a home court advantage if we get the fans to show up, the students. It can be a really cool place to play.
Nick, appreciate the time. I know you've got to go get to Hawk Talk coming up here in about 15 minutes or so. Appreciate you taking some time with us, bud.
Well, I'm going to finish my gumbo first, and then, yes, I'll get to Hog Talk. I look forward to seeing you guys here in a few days. Y'all have a safe trip.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Nick. Once again, Nick White, the voice of the ULM Warhawks, one of the best in the business.
Have not seen him since Media Day because no ULM during football season. So this will be the first time since July, whatever it was, down in New Orleans.
That's right. Wow.
When you really break it down, when we see each other and we realize how long it's been going place to place, that's 7 months, 6 months.
Man. We need to have these reunions again. We had the Zoom reunions whenever everything was on quarantine. And normally it's the basketball tournament and the baseball tournament is where we have our full-blown reunions. But
think about the tournament in Pensacola last year. I know you didn't get a chance to go. There was some overlap doing baseball with women's basketball, and you call them that remotely. But that was the first time I think I'd seen Matt Stoltz and Josh Sowers in over a year.
Yeah, we were going through, and when's the last time I saw this person, this person, this person? It's crazy.
Has he joined us?
He's.
I thought I saw a Raging Cajun.
No, it was here.
Pop in.
But going back to this ULM team, and there's always one team a year that seems like they have dealt with COVID more than anybody else.
Last year it was Georgia State.
Yeah. This year it's ULM.
But still, they played all 8 of their conference games, to Nick's point. Coach Richard is a guy that says, if I've got 7, I'm playing. I think he would try to convince his guys, if there were 4.5, that they would play. That's just the kind of coach that he is.
Yeah.
And even though they have a little bit more depth perceived this year, they could go 10 deep. He's still somebody that's only going to play 6 or 7 guys. He might get a couple of guys a minute or so here and there, but he likes his top 6. They're all going to play about 30 to 35 minutes. Sometimes their point guard, Elijah Gonzalez, he had a stretch where he played 85 minutes in 2 games. Now, one of those was the 45-minute overtime game against UT Arlington where they had 7 healthy bodies. So he played all 45. They had a guy come off the bench who played 41 minutes. That was Johnny Williams, the 4th. He had only played 50 minutes combined the previous 5 games. So it speaks to that point even more that if he's got his 7 that can play, he's going to play.
There have been some really good battles between Georgia Southern and ULM, too.
Yep. I can think about that team that he mentioned really early in Georgia Southern's Sun Belt tenure. The year before I got here, 14-15, they had a guy named Tyler Ongwai, who was one of the top rebounders in the league. Those two met in the semifinals. Georgia Southern eking out a close victory to take on Georgia State in the championship, and that was the 38-36 loss. But ULM could have very easily gone to the dance that year, and then the next year when they had DeMondre Harvey, they had Justin Robertson, they were a force. Majuk Dang was a senior that year. Georgia Southern got them in that meeting at Hanner Fieldhouse, but they hadn't figured some things out offensively. Nick Capola was on that team. But then the Eagles went to Fan Ewing, and by that time they were in the middle of their 10-game winning streak. They ran it all the way to the tournament championship, but they ran into Little Rock and Chris Beard and Brian Berg. They were up 9 at the half, but Little Rock came back and won. Even so, they have been successful enough over about a 5 or 6 year stretch. They have been regulars in the CIT and the CBI because they buy into those tournaments. They are able to rally so much local support for those because I think it reminds them a lot of the Southland Conference in the early days of the Sun Belt. We were there for that Texas Southern game in 2019,
That's right.
The triple overtime game where Michael Ertl hit a 35-footer at the buzzer to send it into, I think that was to send it into the second overtime. Randy Peel was an assistant at that time for Texas Southern. We caught up with him after the game. He spent some time at Georgia Southern. That place was packed. Just like Hanner, you pack it, it's going to be loud. Fan Ewing was ballistic that night, and unfortunately ULM didn't win, but that is the kind of following that they have developed, even though they've had a couple of rough years. This team is much better than what they've had the last 2 years. I don't know if it's as good as that 2018 team that had Deshaun Smith and was making threes left and right, but this is still a team, if they can get their combinations correct, this is a team that's capable of a lot.
Turn the attention now to the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana, and who better to talk anything Raging Cajuns than the voice of the Raging Cajuns, Jay Walker. How we doing, sir?
We're doing fine. It's good to see you guys, and Danny, looking forward to seeing you this weekend, and Colin, hopefully see you before too long, too.
We'll get there. Don't worry.
All right, first and foremost, what are you going to feed Danny this weekend?
Actually, it's interesting because our good friend Craig Malasso has informed me he's cooking Friday night.
Oh no.
So you're going to get whatever is in the pot.
Is this good?
I don't know.
Yeah, how is Craig as a cook? I know he's a very good pourer, but I didn't know about a cook.
He now I've had some of his smoked wings. They've been very good, but other than that, I've never eaten anything that Craig has cooked. So he said I'll either cook or grill is what he said. So that's what Danny's eating Friday night, unless Danny chooses to eat something else.
Okay.
I got a feeling there's not going to be another choice.
Well, there's something else I got to see, which we'll take care of in one fell swoop.
Absolutely.
We'll take
true.
care of that, though.
And it's ready for you.
Take us into this Louisiana team, 9-8 overall, 4-3 in conference play, and obviously you guys having to play Georgia State inside the Cajun Dome before you get to see Georgia Southern. But what is this Louisiana team all about this year?
I think a little bit of inconsistency at the guard play. There are nights where they shoot it pretty well. There are nights that they don't. This team now, in the victory over Troy, they only turned it over 11 times. But this team has turned it over an inordinate amount of times this year. And that's been some of the issues that they've had. But when they can keep turnovers down, and if they can shoot a decent percentage from the field, you got a couple of guys inside who can be dominant, and Theo Akuba and Jordan Brown, and Duguay now coming off the bench. So that gives you three big guys who can play. I think what's happened since conference play started is this team has gone as Kobe Julian has gone. Julian had a very poor night against South Alabama. The Cajuns lost that game. But when Kobe's shooting it well and scoring the basketball, the Cajuns are a pretty good team and pretty tough to beat.
We just talked about this with Nick. 2 years ago was the last time that we saw you on court. It was that March game, March the 9th, Jared Benko's first day on campus. He had just got introduced officially as Georgia Southern's director of athletics. It was when the conference tournament was on campus sites before nobody did anything else with COVID kicking in.
I was watching that game at Pete's.
Yes, you were. You were down in Lafayette.
That was fantastic.
But talking with Nick about how there's no roster recognition from Warhawks to Eagles to Warhawks, I can look up and down the Cajun roster. Last time we would have seen you, Julian and Cadwell were still dealing with injuries. I remember a little bit of Duguay. He had a double-double that night at Hanner, 11 and 14. But outside of that, and maybe a little bit of Trajan Wesley, have not seen Akuba yet, have not seen Jordan Brown. He's got a lot of a pedigree for being a former five-star guy. But this is a team that Georgia Southern largely doesn't know much about.
Well, guess what? I looked at your roster and I see Elijah McCadden and a bunch of guys that I have no idea what they are. And it was even worse the other night with Troy when the Cajuns played Troy. I looked at their roster. I knew none of them. They played 13 guys in the game with dark uniforms with red numerals that you couldn't see. Oh no, it was just such an enjoyable time. But that's what it is now, East versus West. You know, outside of Appalachian State, and you know a lot of those names on that roster. Outside of them, I look at the teams in the East, and of course Georgia State's got a lot of familiar names, but South Alabama's got basically a whole new roster. Georgia Southern's got a lot of new players. Troy's got a lot of new players. So, yeah, everybody do your homework because you're not going to recognize a lot of folks.
All right, the red numbers on the black jerseys, not been able to see them. Are you calling the game from Cajun Field?
You could see them okay, but they were I ought to get to choose what uniforms teams wear because those are the South Alabama jerseys with the red on the blue. Neither one of those are easy.
Yeah,
that's not as bad as the South Alabama that had the white and then the white numbers barely outlined in red.
Yeah, yeah, been there.
Why don't folks check with broadcasters before they put their orders in? Because over the years, and I'm sure it's true for you guys too. Regardless of the sport, there have been some color combinations and stuff that you look at them and you say, why did you do that? Just why?
I can remember the 2017 football game when we came down to Cajun Field. You guys wore the black uniforms with the red numbers, could not see. If it would have been standing next to me, I couldn't have told you who was wearing what.
and that's why Mark Hudspeth is going to hell. It just. No, I told him more than once. I said, you hate me, don't you? You obviously hate me. And even Billy Napier's first year, they wore him because they ordered new black uniforms, and he didn't like the way they looked, so he went with the Hudspeth uniforms. And I said, you and I are not going to be friends if you do that again. So no, we've been guilty also.
So we kind of step back from basketball a little bit. This is the first time we've been able to talk to you in the last little bit, at least on air. But there's a lot of excitement around Louisiana athletics kind of as a whole. You've got Billy Napier moving on to Florida. You've got the new coach coming in, somebody that has been with Louisiana for the last couple of years. You've got the new construction project coming to Cajun Field in the next few years. Just a lot of really good excitement around Cajun athletics as a whole.
Yeah, of course, Billy had some special times here in Louisiana. I mean, that they've won at a clip that they've never even dreamed about winning before. And I think there was a lot of disappointment, when he left, but that's the way this business works. Mike Desormeaux is, as Danny will be very quick to point out, I'm an old guy now, and I've been doing this for a long time. But Mike Desormeaux, pound for pound, might be the toughest student athlete I've ever covered. And I'm very excited about him getting the opportunity to be the head coach of this football team. I think you guys will understand this. A coach comes in and you want to do a good job and all that other good stuff, okay? And you're paid to win. But when you're an alumnus, it's personal. And I asked Mike about it before the bowl game. He said, "Let me tell you something. It's 1,000% personal." So it's now you've got, in addition to wanting to go out and do your job and do it well, now you've got this inner thing which helps drive you as well. And I think that's a good thing when you can have somebody who went to school at your place and be the head coach. And because look, he's been around this campus now for 17 years, and he's pretty excited. We're excited to have him. Hopefully one of these days that football construction project will get underway. There's a lot of rumor that it's going to start this summer, which means we may all be displaced next year, but we'll figure it out. And then, you've got, softball again is going to be really good. I think that Matt Deggs is going to have the most athletic team that the Cajuns have had probably since 2014. I'm still not sure about the pitching staff, but he's got a very athletic team out there. So yeah, there are a lot of things to be excited about here. The real excitement comes when the football project is done and Deggs starts getting teams to the NCAA regionals and Desormeaux continues the success of the football program. Then things will get really exciting. But right now the excitement is kind of like anticipation. It's, the ketchup bottle, Carly Simon singing, all that good stuff.
I knew he was going to get something with music in there at some point. Him and I have had some musical texts over the last couple of days just because a song either I've heard that I didn't realize the meaning of, or, with Meatloaf's passing just a couple of days ago, I didn't realize. I remember watching the game because he sung the national anthem before the '94 All-Star game in Pittsburgh, and I had either completely forgot about that or I never saw it. But the first time I'd heard it is one of the best I'd ever heard.
Yeah, you're a big music guy. I don't think a lot of people know that.
I spent 20 years in music radio. Even before that, when I was a kid, listening to the radio was about everything that I was all about. Now I've tried to stay up with contemporary music over the last 20 years. I probably don't know the 2000s better than I know stuff before 2000. But yeah, I mean, look, I love music and I loved, music radio while I was in it. And, you'll never ride in my car without something playing. And it just, but I do. I'm a music junkie.
Pop an 8-track in, we're in good shape.
Nowadays, I'm all about, my favorite contemporary artists are probably Rob Thomas / Matchbox 20, Lady Gaga, and Imagine Dragons are probably my favorites.
You know, I think you might be the last person that I would peg as a Lady Gaga person.
I'll say this. This is a true story. The Super Bowl, where New England had the big comeback against the Falcons.
Yeah, thanks.
I actually watched that game in Statesboro. I got invited to this thing by a Georgia Southern fan, and it was being held in the downtown area. And we were all talking. I brought this guy a case of Raging Cajun Lager as a gift for inviting us to the party. When it was time for the halftime show, I walked away and I stood in front and I watched Gaga's performance, and it was like, don't anybody come talk to me, because this is the best part of the Super Bowl right here. I've been a Gaga fan for a long time.
Oh, the trivia.
See, we could talk to him and it goes so many different directions.
Oh, no doubt.
We had a plan about talking about Eagles and Cajuns basketball on Saturday. We can go so many different directions.
Yeah, you got anything else basketball to ask him?
How's the Cajun Dome doing? We haven't been there in a little while.
The Cajun Dome really hasn't changed. It's still a very big place, and there's still not enough people in it. And last year, of course, we had to broadcast from up at the top of the first level, and it was up pretty high.
Yeah.
Well, we're back courtside this year, and the Cajun Dome is the Cajun Dome. The concessions are still way overpriced, and sometimes we win and sometimes we don't. But yeah, you're not going to look around saying, "Oh, gee, this is new," because nothing is.
Jay, you're my favorite person we have on the podcast.
And look, I'm just, you're asking questions. I'm just answering.
No, and that's the best part of it. Nobody's ever going to wonder what you're thinking.
Oh, no. Well, if you don't want my opinion on stuff, you better not have me on.
I love it. There needs to be more people like you, Jay.
Oh, I've been saying that for years.
Jay, appreciate the time. Sad that I'm going to miss you this weekend, but Danny and you guys will have a fantastic time, I'm sure.
We will have an enjoyable time. It's going to be good. I hope that both of us are coming in off wins when we get to the court on Saturday, which means I hope that Georgia State forgets how to shoot the basketball for at least one more game.
Jay, appreciate the time.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, he is a national treasure. And there's nothing that will ever make me say anything different.
Not just a treasure for Acadiana, but a treasure for all of us.
Oh, for sure. This is why I don't like basketball. Because I don't get to see any of our friends most of the time. Because they're all on the men's side. Now, next week, I'll get to see JT, and I'll get to see Barry next week. Isn't next week when South Alabama and Troy come in?
Yes.
So I'll get to see him because we're here for Saturday, Georgia State.
Double, okay.
Oh, let's go.
See, it's all coming back. It's all coming back. Bro.
Let's go.
The one thing I
was going to be really upset if you said no. It's going to be two teams without radio.
Well, why to think about it? Because we aren't usually in this same place this much for basketball season, so this is a cool thing.
No, but I think you've seen more Louisiana women's basketball than you've seen Georgia Southern women's basketball. Because
we're down in Mobile. Yeah,
you had it down in Mobile. Yeah. You'll get a doubleheader this week. I think they're playing ULM.
Yes, Mike Hammett.
Mike
Hammett has already reached out.
How about it?
We're gonna talk about some baseball and go get
talk about Fed.
Talk about Fed. They got turf on baseball now. They
I know he sent me a picture of their new field for the scorebook when it gets done.
The thing that I wanted to talk about with JB, you can talk about a million different things with him because he's been around. I know I make the joke, but he really has been around. He's seen a lot of different things. But we were at Media Day this year, and they had the championship belt for the Sun Belt. Didn't play the title game the year before between Louisiana and Coastal. So by the end of the day, we had Jay go over and Joe Cashin for Coastal go over and act like they were playing tug of war with the title belt. And then Coastal messes up and they don't even go to the title this year, but Louisiana takes care of App and Billy Napier goes to Florida.
Oh, man. I love it. See, that's the fun part of this. Because if you would have told me before getting into all this that I would be as close as I am to people in Lafayette, Louisiana, in Monroe, Louisiana, in Arlington, Texas, I would have told you were nuts.
Home is wherever you make it.
Yeah. And it's wherever we end up being.
As much as we travel, whether we are here, because when you travel, even though Statesboro is where we make our home, our residence,
right,
it's still part of the travel. So it's just another destination, even though you're coming back to it or going to it, whatever way you want to look at it.
Right.
But wherever we go, whether it's in the Sun Belt or for the friends that we have made in our non-conference travels, home is wherever you make it. And I think about the countless times we have been to Lafayette, how wonderful those people are. And
my goodness.
We've spoken so much about their baseball fans. The Cajun Cooking Club will get a chance to go there this year. I think it's April.
Oh.
And we get to go there in April. We haven't been there since 2000. We haven't been there since 2018 for the tournament, but haven't played a series there since May of 2017. So that one has been circled for quite a while. But they just have such an appreciation for the town and for the culture of what Ragin' Cajun Athletics is. And even for Monroe, it's at the top of the state, but Nick has been there for so long.
Yeah.
Mike has been there for the last couple of years. Coach Richard bleeds Warhawk, I guess collegiate gold now since they updated their color scheme. I love Fant Ewing Coliseum. I don't care if you think I'm nuts. I love older arenas. I'm looking forward to this trip. I always look forward to this trip. We haven't had it for 2 years. So I'm looking forward to this trip.
Women's basketball again at home. Troy, 6 p.m. on Thursday, 2 o'clock on Saturday. Georgia Southern men's basketball heads down to the Boot State. 7:30 the tip-off inside the Fant Ewing Coliseum against ULM on Thursday. And then down to the Cajun Dome to take on the Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana on Saturday. Again, 8 p.m. the tip-off. Danny will have airtime coverage for you starting at 7:30.
And the last time we were at the Cajun Dome, Bob Marlin was only there for about 6 minutes because he got ejected.
Right.
He was
not happy.
Look, these games have featured a lot of technical fouls, and I don't like saying that in a certain way, but it is entertaining, especially with Coach Marlin. He picked up back-to-back technicals 6 minutes into the game, and this is when Mark Byington was still here. He walked over to me because we're bench side at the Cajun Dome. We're not across the way like we are almost everywhere else. He looked at me and said, "What did he say?" Mark, I got a headset on. I don't know what he said. You could probably figure it out. But it was something about a call on that end of the floor. He flipped. He was gone the rest of the game. Georgia Southern came back and won, so we appreciate it.
Is that when the strength coach had to pretty much tote him out?
Yes. He treated him like a duffel bag.
That was all. I think I was in the studio watching it on TV, so I heard it, and then about 30 seconds later, I got to see it.
Quan Jackson scored his 1,000th point that night, too.
How about that? 6 degrees. We will see what this edition of Cajuns versus Eagles at 8 p.m. on Saturday. That'll wrap things up for this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Appreciate Jay Walker, Nick White joining us via Zoom. Really appreciate Bucky Wagner sharing his thoughts on a Statesboro legend gone way too soon. But for the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.